revisiting their like strategies. And that could be very different, right? For some companies, they've been completely, for some companies, it's a very difficult time. So they're really looking into like a super strong cost cutting and really trying to still operate throughout the crisis. For others, actually, like there's someone in the middle, you know, that are still trying, like cutting costs, but still not that much. So still trying to focus on like growth of the revenue and try to invest in those areas. And of course, there are others that are really like aggressive, I think, as well. Those industries that are not that much affected, they are definitely really looking at it as an opportunity to really grow their digital presence, or like to get a closer connection, you know, to get part of the business that other companies cannot get at the moment. So I think there are a variety of things how that is affecting different companies, and it's very much then affecting your strategy and how do you evaluate where actually to run as of now. To prospect, like which companies and how to prospect and how to interact with them. So I think that's pretty much like from my perspective. Yeah, Moshe, please.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, you know, we are in a very interesting position right now with enterprise companies and corporations where, you know, it's the discussions move from roadmaps for 2020 into how are we going to survive this crisis, right? So the focus kind of shifted then from all the plans that they've made last year and in December and even in January into how are we keeping business continuity, and within that, how do we support our customers on the same level from a customer care perspective, and from a sales perspective, how do we maintain the same levels of sales, revenues, etc. And for us, and we're going to talk about it today, you know, it's a very interesting point in time, and it doesn't matter if you're selling a mission critical product or if you're selling a nice to have product. You are if you're not at least, you know, excited is I don't want to use that word in this context, but it's a very interesting opportunity for SaaS software companies in the market. And what we see today with many of these enterprise brands is that they are really focused on priorities and what to do first, what to do second, what will be the most important thing to launch in terms of solutions for the short term. But have no mistakes, many of them are also considering, okay, how will this change the day after? So yeah, so very interesting point in time right now.
Yeah, super cool. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's just a tough time, and I think companies are really just seeing that they have to really focus on just the few things that really matter. And I'm guessing that when we get to talking about prospecting, I'm guessing that a lot of companies are probably a little bit harder to reach when it comes to new ideas, new opportunities, things which are not necessarily on the mission critical path for survival right now. So, you know, this was a question which kind of came up in our brainstorming prior to this call. Maybe Julia, you want to start again with, you know, what are the main pain points that you're seeing from your customers right now? And perhaps also, you know, how are they different from what they were before March 10th or whenever it was that this thing got really serious?
I think for every company at the moment every company has their KPIs, right? It's same like sales organizations as well. So at the moment, they're really trying. I don't know how companies are reacting, but in my company, for example, we're not changing our KPIs. That means that now you need to really revisit the whole strategy of how you will get to those numbers, right? And then there are different ways how you can get to those numbers. So depending on the company and depending on the priorities, there could be options like really refocus on growing sales. And I've heard that from some of the retailers, actually, for those like who close their stores and they now invest like heavily into digital marketing because they try to reach to their customers. And again, this kind of companies, like big enterprise brands, they're very sustainable, right? So I will assume that not all of them are really like cutting lots of costs, but they are also looking into the ways how they can actually get to their customers in a more efficient and in a better way. At the same time, of course, they're kind of moving into this completely new world with the remote resources working and with the new setups that they need to really organize, right? So I think there's lots on the table for lots of different companies at the moment, and they really, each company revisit the way they're doing things. That would be, I think, the feedback.
Yeah. I'll add on top of that. So yeah, as kind of to continue the first question. So absolutely, you know, they all deal with immediate loss of revenue in one way or another, and it doesn't matter if it's a telco or a travel brand or insurance or banking, right? So they all deal in one way or another with how to keep the business running, and on top of that, you know, I always try to put myself in the decision maker's shoes. And at this point, they have tremendous amount of pressure on their shoulders to make the right decision. So if you're kind of thinking about your Q2 opportunities, Q3 opportunities, then many of these products that we offer them, they categorize them according to, okay, is this something that I must do now, or is this something that I need to do next year, right? And you know, for many of us here, many companies that I see or had a quick chat with, this fits exactly to what we're trying to provide them with. For other companies, but also for SMBs, you know, some of these solutions won't be relevant for now, but we have an opportunity here to build a relationship for the day after. So yeah, so definitely if we go back to the pain point again, so I think for most of them, they are really struggling with prioritizing these immediate short-term solutions. And this is exactly where we come in, right?
Nice. Yeah, just so you guys know, I just released a poll at Slido. So you can jump over there and kind of share what you're seeing as far as, you know, what are the major pain points that you're seeing from your customers right now. And we can bring that back into the mix in a few minutes. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about how the decision makers are reacting. You know, we've been talking a lot about, you know, strategies, changing, priorities are changing, the roadmap is changing, the decision-making process is changing. Is there anything more that you guys can say to this about how the decision-making process is changing and what enterprise AEs need to be aware of as they are, you know, going to connect with their customers and what they can actually do to have more success when approaching these customers in these times?
So I think actually decision-making process, and this is something also we need to keep in mind actually, and kind of adjusting the way we work, is really moved on a very high level. So nowadays, it seems like every decision that is going to be made is going through the C-level, right? So I think previously you also had a chance, you know, there was a period where companies were ready to try new things. You know, you could meet someone mid-level and kind of pitch the idea, and this mid-level person can actually go and bring it to the management. So from what I'm seeing now, it's actually not the case anymore in a way. So you really need to go to kind of the person who is overseeing the strategy, you know, and get the direct contact with those people and do the best to go there. So from even like adjusting the prospecting is really adjusting, okay, so who are you actually approaching now? Because every decision is, every new spend is actually going through the very high level decision maker. Yeah,
there's tons, I agree 100%. There's tons of focus right now on every decision. And also on top of the, you know, regular considerations that decision makers have, they now also have the, you know, the fact that they've done, you know, they executed their operations in a certain way for the past 20, 30 plus years. And now their teams are working from home. If it's retailers, now shops are closed. If it's telcos, there's no contact centers. Everyone is, you know, is working from home. So they're dealing with a whole new set of considerations. But on the other hand, I can tell you from one customer example, I had a telco brand that I was trying to approach or start something for something like 15 months. And I think Max and Julia, I told you about this when we spoke previously, but you know, from a 15, 20 month cycle, I got a message saying, hey, we need your help. This is the use case that we have. How can you help us? We need to go live in 2 weeks. So things are, you know, there are two sides of this coin, right? For the coin. So it's either some companies will push you away, but from other perspectives, we may find ourselves in a position where our mission critical solution is now going to push this company forward to to serve a very specific objective. So I think many decision makers are now either delegating to certain teams like IT, customer experience, go find me the solution that will, help me fight back. And this could really change a lot of things for enterprise sales folks. Super
cool. So kind of like the major points I heard was like from you, Julia, just saying like this idea that most decisions are just getting pushed to the decision maker, the highest level of the organization, which I would imagine means that a lot of decisions which could be made just fall off the table because there's just not enough bandwidth in a given executive's day to decide on everything. So then they just prioritize the $100,000 or $1 million questions versus, the 10K or 50K questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then like on your side, Moshe, you were saying how like some people, I actually forgot your point. What was your main point?
Already,
it's getting bad.
Yeah.
I'm getting old, folks.
Yeah, it means that, just to summarize it. So just to summarize this thought, and I think, again, it goes back to, it doesn't matter if if I'm a sales guy in a company, it doesn't matter if it's a nice to have product or a mission critical one. And there is a chance that some company right now needs what you do. And I think the main challenge for us, for the sales folks, is to find the right team right now that deals with this with an objective that connects directly to what you're offering. And when we put these two together, then we are in a point in time where the connection between the problem to the solution will be stronger than ever. So if we manage to click on those pain points, we may find ourselves in a position where deals will be closed faster. And we already know that the need for SaaS software products in the market will go up after this, because everything will be much more digital and less on-site, less physical connection, and more software and automation, right? So many of our solutions will be very, very critical for these companies. So yeah, that was the point. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I feel like maybe one more thing to add, Max, if I can. So like talking about the priorities, etc. I also think, which is not really playing a lot in our favor, but companies are really trying to protect their internal staff, like an internal people, right? So we're at the vendor part, right? So we are kind of outsourced. And I think the biggest priority for every company, and we should understand that and be very gentle about it now when we are like approaching companies, is really they're trying to protect. If you're having a service that can potentially let go some of their internal people, you should be very gentle on how you position that, because they really try to protect their employees. And that makes total sense, honestly, right? So even like from the world perspective overall, and the company policy perspective. Yeah,
that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, Julia. I would say maybe we open up a little bit for questions. It looks like really quickly, it looks like we had a few people fill out the Slido. If you haven't had a chance to look at that, you should be able to see the results. If you click on the Slido right now, it looks like the major pain points that people are seeing from their customers right now is just redesigning the roadmap for the year, having new priorities coming in, with the second biggest pain point being cost cutting and resource allocation.
That's reality, actually. I think that's very much aligned with the reality. Yeah.
Super cool. So is there anybody in the audience who has a question for Julia and Moshe about kind of like the big picture market situation at this time? You can click on the raise your hand button, and Mirik, if you have any more, you put something in the Q&A here. Do you think that companies are primarily looking for cost cutting nowadays? If there's any more context to that, feel free to raise your hand as well, and we can get you on stage.
There must be questions. Right. Someone must raise their hand, right?
Yeah. All right.
I don't know, like we can take this question, right, about cost cutting still.
Sure.
I think really the first point is actually reprioritization, right? And then based on that, companies are looking, they look into cost cutting, but not necessarily the primarily thing they will do, right? So I really see lots of enterprise, and we're talking here about strategic enterprise, right? Like big brands that are there forever and they're very like strong overall. I see really lots of them looking into actually how do they grow revenue the fastest possible way. You know, where do they need to move the priority to really achieve that? Cost cutting goes as an addition to that, of course, like everyone revisiting contracts, their rents, etc. So I've heard lots of things like that. But again, in terms of like SaaS and what we sell, and if it's affecting actually the growth of the revenue, that will be the biggest priority rather than cost cutting, I would say.
Super cool.
And also just to add on top, I think it's a great point. And also on top of that, I mean, when I hear cost cutting, I immediately think about ROI and value. So I think it's a question of what's the value that our product brings to a brand. If we are able to present an actual ROI, even if they have cutting costs, so maybe it won't be a solution they will implement in the next month, but if there is an ROI there and you're providing them with value, this is something they will consider. So every time I hear cutting costs, I'll ask, okay, but what's the ROI? Is there an ROI? And if there is an ROI, cutting costs doesn't really matter. If you manage to convince that this is a value that you provide, the enterprise brands will find a way to, will find the budget to support the project, right? So yeah, that's what I'm hearing when I'm facing with, we don't have budget for this, or we have to cut costs.
I want to say that it's exactly like when salespeople would say that the solution is too expensive, that just means that you didn't show the value. That's just being there forever. That's the right approach.
Now think about it. Sorry, I know there's a time limit, but think about it also from the C-level perspective. You just presented something to a COO, to head of customer experience, head of digital, and if it's a mind-blowing, value-creating solution, I guarantee you they will go to procurement. They will ask to find budget from somewhere if this is something that really touch the core of their business. So, I've been in situations where budget was literally out. We already ran the budget out on products that we bought earlier the year, but we still need this solution for next year, and they find the budget. So, yeah.
Cool. Rock on. Well, thanks for those perspectives. I'm getting some questions from people in the audience who are chatting at me, and but I think they actually tie in perfectly with our next section. So I would say thanks for your questions, Mirek, and let's go ahead and let's jump into the second section, which is going to be talking a little bit about opening deals, prospecting. How has prospecting changed from an enterprise AE perspective? And I'll just leave the question at that for now, and turn it over to you guys.
Do you want to go? Should I go?
You can go. I'll add.
So it changed dramatically because brands are now changing during the crisis, and therefore we, as the sales folks who is trying to pitch them something, need to change our style and our message as well. In terms of focus on the immediate actions that they're looking to have, and if what you're proposing is not touching the core of their business for the next 1 or 2 months, then we need to be very gentle. And I think, Julia, you just mentioned that we need to be more soft with our approach in terms of education, because if you look at it from, okay, I need to close this Q2 deal, this is something very urgent, I need to hit my numbers, then this is something that you need to consider, because sales cycle in enterprise sales is usually, as most of you know, about 9-12 months. And then this could be a very interesting time for us to build relationships rather than closing deals for this month. So I think I can tell you personally, a lot of the things that I do right now is developing, planting those seeds in order to rip those later in the year or even next year. So if it's not something that is super immediate and relevant for the business for now, my best advice would be think about the rest of the year. Think about this brand as relationship that you build for the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's totally making total sense for me. And I mean, I think the bases are still the same. You know, the basis for any enterprise sales, you're making your research, you know, you're trying to understand where the company is, what's happening with the company at the moment. So I don't think that the like total basis has changed. Really, what has changed is more the way you approach it, right? And honestly, I think in enterprise sales, yeah, you can be very pushy, but most of the time, you know, knowing that we don't have thousands of accounts to prospect, we have like targeted, you know, these beautiful accounts that we need to get into. So we never burn the bridges right there. We're always being like gentle. Definitely nowadays, the thing that you should be aware of is that there is a huge kind of a personal thing there that might be happening, you know, with the person. So it's an unstable environment personally for people. And that means that, yeah, you always need to keep it in mind, being gentle, being more empathic to the situation, you know, kind of give a little bit of your personality there. I think this is definitely something that has changed. And for other points, I think you're totally right that it's about building the relationships. It's about sharing insights. It's about like putting those seeds that you will then really work on a bit later on when the situation goes back to normal.
Super cool. I would be kind of curious, like, what does that look like, you know, planting seeds for the next level, or for the future? Do you have any specific, I don't know, strategies that you're using which are different in this time than what you would normally do?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is in my mind, when we talk about, you know, switching styles or adjusting them for the situation, for this crisis. So I think, you know, there is an opportunity for us to position ourselves as trusted advisors for these brands. And for me, that means that this is our opportunity to move into a more consultative approach and position ourselves as consultants rather than this is the product, let's book a demo, let me show you how A leads to B leads to C, rather than, and instead of doing this, we can focus on this is how we serve companies that are similar to what you're looking for, what you do, and this is how we serve them with our solution, right? So it really a swift move from let's move these things forward into this is what we already done. This is what we launched successfully with similar brands, and this is how I think we can relate to your objectives and goals for later in the year.
Yeah, I think it's definitely about not being that pushy, you know, like let's have a call in 2 weeks or so. That's definitely not how it's working now. I think it's more now around getting to trying to get to the dialogue with the customer, you know, really trying to kind of keep it open, like share some challenges that you know that your solution is helping to solve, and also you know that similar companies are facing those challenges. Really bring it to the table, saying, hey, is it actually something that you find similar to yourself, or is there anything else you have like trouble with? So it's really about like keeping it more open rather than being like pushy, saying, hey, what about having a call that we usually do, right? So it's a difficult work, right? Because we salespeople, I think we're very much motivated with like results, you know, so we always need these results coming, even if it's like a successful call coming up or something. I think in these times, it's more around really like going slower and having the patience as well, but building it like week after week, right? So like really being in contact with those people, even if you have no answers. That's usually happening in the UK, but you're still approaching them with the right value, you know, from those approaches.
I just want to chime in there. This reminds me to a conversation I was having with one of the speakers from the January session, which we did on six-figure deals. And I think I was actually talking with Julian Weitz from New Relic. And we were talking about this idea of having kind of like a relationship scorecard for your enterprise clients. And what you were just saying about, yeah, hey, we're salespeople, we like to see results, we want to see the number that we're doing, you know, like I did this and what's the output, you know? And when you have such like a long time horizon, it becomes hard to see the output. I was just curious if either of you guys have played with the idea of having some sort of a relationship scorecard where you kind of maybe more measure some of the soft factors of your relationship with an account, so that you can kind of see how you're actually progressing and quantify that in some shape or form.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's an amazing point, because, and everything you said is spot on, because, you know, we have to look at it as and I assume that most of the people on the call are looking at it this way, but, you know, it's not a 100-meter run, it's a marathon. And there's no greater joy than to close a deal after several attempts with a prospect, could be even across different companies that you'll work for, that originally said no, and maybe even 2 or 3 times, but eventually, you know, it's the relationship that sustains, right? And I can give you one example, and I'll ask it as an open question, and reach out to me after the session. I would love to hear if any of you reached out to some of the prospects that didn't buy from you in the past few years, or in the last year or so, and ask them how they're doing during the crisis. It doesn't even have to be project related, right? Just to ask how they're doing, just to build relationships, even on a personal level. And I think that's the opportunity that we have now to really take a step back and develop those relationships. And I think that's what really separates, you know, deals 2021, 22 deals will be sold based on these foundations at the end of the day. I really believe in that.
Yeah, I think from the relationship maps, I think if you have a strategic enterprise account, you're actually working on it always. So, for example, like in my company, we always have like a map, you know, the account and the map of all the people we actually have there, and also tracking what kind of relationships we have with those people. So that's actually an ongoing process as well. And you definitely will build those things also for like prospects, you know, if we, not only for active customers, but also for prospects. So really understanding, because that really gives you a great understanding of where you are, you know, who is your champion, who is actually your distractor, or those kind of things. So I think it's an ongoing process actually with this relationship building. And one tip, you know, for prospecting, it's very, like, preparation is always very important. And nowadays we are so lucky to have, so almost every enterprise customer have this coronavirus answer, let's say, or how they are adapting to the current situation. Super helpful. You definitely need to read it before you go on a call with the prospect or your active customer, because they really openly tell the world what they're actually doing and how they're changing now in order to go through the crisis. So that's important.
Super cool. So Matilde has a question which has been upvoted quite a bit. So actually, I'm going to bring her on stage.
Oh, there are
Matilde.
some votes there.
Yeah.
I think if they come on stage, they probably need to mute off. And yeah, cool.
There you are. Hey, Matilde, how's it going?
Hey, everybody.
Welcome.
Thanks.
So.
Yeah, I have a question because we're talking a lot about reaching out and opening deals and building relationship, but I think the first thing that comes to my mind is how you're gonna actually get into contact with people, because most people are working from home, and the way I'm starting my my sales is basically just cold calling. And when you don't have the personal phone number of the person, it can be quite difficult to reach somebody now. So I was wondering if you have any techniques or advice on how to reach them. Are you using LinkedIn? Are you using Xing? Anything like this that could actually help?
I think it's very fair, right? And I think that's a challenge now in prospecting, that before prospecting could be combined on different touch points. You know, you could use phone, you can use LinkedIn, then email, then phone, then the step you send something like a present, a book or whatever. So now we don't have the books. We cannot send anything to the prospects, and we also cannot use the phone. And the phone is, as you say, actually I think it's the best way to actually get the final answer before you're getting on the phone. So
absolutely,
for us, like, I think the strategy is usually not to do a cold call, but more like approaching the prospect first on LinkedIn or email or something, like getting them familiar with you. And then when you call, it's actually not a cold call already. And it would be like you can invite to the webinar or send something before. So you kind of, when you're calling, it's not a cold call. I think nowadays, really, we have a big emphasis on LinkedIn and email. So most of the outreach is based on those tools. And honestly, I felt, especially at the beginning, I felt that actually people are more responsive on LinkedIn nowadays, because it seems like they're at home, you know, they kind of have time. not always, but sometimes, to speak with some other people. So I felt a little bit there was even a bit of an opening from that perspective. But again, I think it's very much around LinkedIn and emailing, and using those resources of webinars or some prospects that you have in order to get to involve in the conversation.
Yeah, it's definitely more emails today and LinkedIn messages rather than cold calling. I think we experienced the same, but also I think the emphasis is now stronger on the actual message, and I think you'll be surprised how many of your prospects are actually reading your messages. They're looking at it, and I think if the message relates to something that is concrete for what's happening to this specific brand right now, you're going to get something. Even if it's not in the near future, the fact that you can address a problem with examples of what your company can provide in terms of solutions will give you a lot of credit, either in the short term or in the long term. But I think the message has a lot to do with your response rates that you're going to get.
I think not even the core, I think even not the message, but also the subject. Lots of customers, the subject is the core.
Yeah.
That will actually, they either open your email or they move it to trash, right? So that's why subject is really can take 20 minutes to just get the right one. So people will open. Yeah.
True.
Matilda, I have a question, why are you using phone mostly? Did you try to move to LinkedIn emailing, and how is it going? What is the major concern there? You're getting less responses, or?
Yeah, I guess it's just mainly the industry I'm working in. So I'm working for the tourism industry, and I have to say that right now they're not really on LinkedIn. So the main thing that we have is just the phone number, the main phone number. So I'm trying to move to LinkedIn. I used to work with LinkedIn quite a lot in my past jobs, and I like it a lot. But right now, it's quite difficult to reach anybody.
Yeah, but phones are difficult. That's definitely true.
Yeah, think about yourself. Ask yourself the next question. What would be an email that you will be there's no way that you're personally not gonna miss, right? What would be a subject line that Matilda will always open or address? So put yourself in the C-level shoes and try to think, okay, if I'm, for example, approaching an airline, what could be a subject line or a message that can't be missed, right? In terms of coronavirus, in terms of operations today, in terms of whatever it is that connects to their core of business.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, do you have good email addresses, Matilda? Are you getting the email addresses of the decision makers, or do you just have one for the company, like an info at?
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm mostly having the info at, but I could have, it really depends. I'm really trying to get the one of the decision maker. Once I've spotted who is a decision maker, I kind of figure out the pattern, and then I can make it up and try it out. But I think email will be the next thing that I am using because of the telephone number. The telephone number is not working.
And also,
go for it, Julia.
Also, what helps a lot, I think, adding to what Moshe said about emailing and messaging, that's the most important. I always, these days, I think I'm even collaborating more with my colleagues. It's always very good. You drafted something, give it to your colleague, because that will be new, fresh eyes, that will actually open it or not open it. So you get very good tips. So it's really good to do an internal check before going to the customer.
Really quick question, Matilda, while we still have you on stage. We have a bunch of people in the chat talking about using video, using Loom, using Vidyard to send little video messages. So maybe a quick question to you, Matilda, and then we'll open up to our panelists. Matilda, is video something that you're already integrating into your email outreach in any way?
Absolutely not. Never tried. So that could be something I can try. A little bit new, I think easy for people to go through because they don't even need to read. So why not trying? Yeah.
Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Matilda.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. If anybody else has questions about prospecting, feel free to raise your hand. And I think we'll probably wrap up this section in another 4 minutes or so, or 2 minutes. But Julia and Moshe, tell me about video. Is this something that you guys have worked with?
So Me personally, no, but our BDRs are doing that. So that's definitely a new kind of a thing that they're trying to integrate. I know they did it in the past. It actually works pretty well because it gives the personality, there. And I know that they're now implementing it again into the different stages. You also don't want to be boring, right? You want to outreach in different ways, and that's really helping there.
Yeah, I've tried it a few times. It can work in a really nice way. I'd say that it doesn't matter what tool or method you use for prospecting. The most important part is to measure. And I know there are a lot of entrepreneurs here. I know usually large companies always measure, especially if you have a BDR team. Then they do measure how many times the email was opened, how many meetings we got from an X amount of outreach attempts. But if you are a CEO or a young business, a startup, my advice would be to really keep close track on the success rate of or whatever it is that you're trying to use as an outreach method. Just measure.
Experimenting, yeah.
Exactly.
Cool.
We used to go really far with this one. We used to measure the days that we get more responses, the time of day, if it's 6, 7 p.m. when they drive back home, or if it's early mornings when they're driving to the office. So everything needs to be measured in order to actually decide if it works or not, right?
Yep. That makes sense. So guys, I'm just realizing that we had a poll for this topic, which I've just made live. So if you have a chance to go over to Slido, you can check those, and we'll come and try to circle back to the responses in a little bit. There's one last question coming here from Anwar Mrissa, which has been up here for a while. Are you guys talking about subscription products or transactional based ones? I'm guessing subscription, right, folks?
For me, yes.
No, transactional for me.
Hey.
Interaction more. I mean, by transactional, I mean interaction based. So yeah, but enterprise businesses, you can see both of them are as common, right? There are companies that sell subscription, sell users, and companies that sell engagement / interaction / yeah.
Okay. Anwar, if that didn't answer your question, throw something in the chat. We'll try to circle back to that in a little bit. With that said, I think, though, it's probably time to go on to our next topic, which is going to be talking about developing deals. Yeah. What's changed? How has your approach to building the business case changed? And generally speaking, what new factors do enterprise AEs need to be more aware of today as they work with deals which are in their pipeline right now and work on continuing to progress those? So who wants to go first?
Do you wanna or I? Well, whatever.
Go ahead.
All right, Moshe.
Yeah, it goes back to if I need to summarize it in one sentence, so the bottom line is now stronger than ever. So we need to be very, very aware of to have a clear differentiation between which opportunities are critical for businesses to close now and how these opportunities need to be developed because these business needs are relevant for now, and which are kind of more a strategic opportunity for later, right? And then when we think about business cases, then it relates directly to that, because if I need to prove that this changed dramatically something, for example, in the brand's operations to support them through transitioning from whatever it is that they're doing in coronavirus or before coronavirus to a new style of operation, then I think the business case should touch exactly that. So the question should be, how is my solution going to help this brand transition into a situation where their business grow in this time for the next 1 month, 2 months, how our solution actually provides value for the short term, right? So absolutely. Yeah, that should be the first.
Yeah, I think our enterprise sales, everything, right, is around uncovering the pain that the customer has, right? And as Moshe mentioned, I think there is short-term pain, there is longer-term pain, and you kind of need to think about this plan, right? You kind of also need to be more creative of how your solution will actually help them now in the next couple of months or more, like 6 months or whatever, and then how it will sustain, in the longer term when things are going to change or get back to normal. So I think the emphasis on ROI is even even bigger now, and you might need to talk about it even early in the process, right? Because ROI is a very important part. Like I think every dollar counts, or every euro counts for the customers as of now, and they really need to have a very straightforward explanation why they will go for something like that, right? And it means that also we need to understand that you have a champion. You actually have a champion because this champion helps you to sell internally, and you also should be aware that selling internally nowadays is much harder. So you need to give your champion more tools and more support in order to go through that, through all the challenges that he will be facing internally if he wants to work with you. So I think overall business cases that are stronger are winning, and you need to think about it, how you build the strong business case, think about any doubts that could be there, and think about it in advance. And position how its short-term, long-term perspective can look like.
It's super cool. I'm curious, Julia. Like, I'm a little bit familiar with the Applause product, and I've talked to several people who used to work there, and I'm just curious. Like, from what I've understood from talking to your colleagues in the past, is that Applause just has a killer sales team because. I mean, the product, it's sometimes a little bit harder to put it on that critical path. Do you have any examples of how you're like adapting the Applause product to be part of the critical path of your buyer's journey?
Yeah, and it's true. We have a crazy team, and I think it's mostly because honestly we're focusing on outbound sales. So we're really like looking precisely on how we prospect the messaging. And it's not even the time of coronavirus. It's constantly, right? So that means that we actually have all the tools in place in order to adapt to Corona. We already have the mindset of those like researching and value from very beginning and those kind of things. I think in a way we're actually lucky because, we're in the digital space. We help companies be better in digital, and there is a big emphasis on this at the moment, right? And I think for us, really, as companies I think Applause product overall is the major competitor that we have is status quo. So how the things has been done in the past, right? So we are really, this is the major thing. We need to challenge the status quo and show them how they can do things better. And as the companies are now revisiting their digital strategy, we're actually in a good position because they're revisiting the ways they've been doing things. And for us, it's actually kind of a boost of having this conversation. So we see lots of movements there in that sense. I don't know if it answers the question.
Cool. No, I think it does. It's jogging my memory as to like some things that we talked about, with you guys having a solution where I think in some ways you're competing with people who have office-based employees. Yeah. And you're able to like take that advantage. I don't know, Moshe I think for LivePerson, I feel like the angle is perhaps not that challenging to put you guys on the critical path, but maybe you disagree.
Yeah, we haven't, I mean, we've been working around the clock because our solution really connects to it's super mission critical, moving operations to work from home. I think the key word is honesty, and I feel like brands appreciate that honesty coming from a salesperson, and it relates directly to, I mean, if there are folks here that sell a variety of products, I would say that this is the time to focus on what really matters for brands for the short term. So it's really important to be honest with what's not relevant. But on the same time, if you are selling something that's mission critical and specific to coronavirus and how a company can move from doing something one way to a better way to serve customers, then this is the time to put the pedal to the metal and really push that product fast and strong. Because we're salespeople. We always we are more, I'd say, at least the vast majority of us are more pushy than waiting for someone to approach them. But you'll be amazed by the amount of brands that are actively searching for solutions today because of coronavirus. They're searching for solutions to make their business more digital, more customer friendly, accessible from everywhere. So yeah, with LivePerson, it's we work with contact centers, we work with operations teams. So all those companies that want to move their operations to work from home need our platform to connect to those consumers. But I feel like there are tons of solutions out there that can serve can find those mission critical points, right?
Yeah, I mean, what this is making me think is maybe after this session, when we have the networking tables open again, maybe I'll start a table for people who want to maybe talk about how to get their product in the mission critical path, if it's not so obvious how that could work.
Yeah.
And maybe we can have some sparring sessions around that.
And one thing to add, I think, we're actually in a very good position as salespeople. And this is something like referring to consultative approach, you know. This is a new reality now, and companies are actually looking, they are interested how other companies are dealing with the things, right? And their industries are dealing with the same things. We as salespeople, we talk with lots of these companies. So we actually have lots of valuable insights on what actually could work, you know, for the companies in your industry. They all really have similar challenges, right? Of course, someone more, someone less, but overall, really sharing the insights from kind of the knowledge that you have is super cool at the moment.
Super cool. Guys, so there was another question. Okay, and there's another poll. I'm gonna get the second poll going in a second. But while we're doing the second poll, there was a question which came up a lot, and it's this one right here. I think a lot of people, I saw in the registration questions, there were at least 8 variations of this, which is how do we keep the deal momentum up with the deals that are in the pipeline right now? You know, so deals which maybe are not closable in the next, 3, maybe even 6 months, but which have progressed to a certain extent. And, maybe we're about to be signed 2 weeks before, just 2 weeks after the, COVID really hit us. What can we do to keep these deals from dying so that we have to start from zero in a post-COVID environment? Curious if either of you have thoughts about this, because this is definitely a question which a lot of people have been asking.
It's a very difficult question as well. I think there is no right or wrong, honestly, right?
Yeah.
Of course, there are some things that I think it's super important, even if deal is cold. And I have those cases when customers are just not answering. We were almost like in the signature stage, but they're not answering because they're in the food retail or not food retail, like restaurants that is closed. They don't have digital delivery and there's like nothing going on overall, right? They're panicking, let's say. I think it's still super important really to keep in touch. Like for example, for myself, every week I get a touch point, whatever that could be. It could be different thing. Of course, you have lots of news on the companies and lots of information. You can provide some valuable insights. We have lots of webinars where we're inviting customers. And for me, it's really around keeping the contact, keeping the relationship warm, even if it's like one side as of now, because I'm not getting any answers potentially. But really, when you're making your research, you see how they are progressing. You can adapt the way you contact them, and basically then there will be a stage where they will return to you. So keeping the persistence, it's very important in sales, even if you're having no replies. So that's pretty much. But it's a very difficult and good question as well. So I'm curious what Moshe will share with us.
Yeah, it's a great question. I definitely agree with Julia about keeping in touch and more than keeping in touch, even making it stronger and increase the number of times you're reaching out to brands you're already in touch with, because it will be very easy from their side to disconnect and even ignore some of the messages because they're focused on super important topics that are critical for their business. But on the same time, I think there needs to be some level of I'll call it kind of exploring what's the pain point and understanding how their business changed or in the process of changing, so you can address the new problems, because whatever that you discussed 2 months ago could be not relevant anymore. Whatever you discussed in 2019 could be really irrelevant. And whatever happened last week with their business could be something that you will close this quarter. So you're in a position where some of the stuff that you already positioned in the past few months could be accelerated. Some of it will be pushed, but also new stuff will come. So I absolutely agree with keeping in touch, but more than that, try to really understand what they're experiencing. That will be crucial in terms of keeping momentum, but also maybe accelerating further. So yeah.
Maybe add to that. Also think one of the things that is quite useful to do at the moment is really revisiting the kind of the buyer's map that you have. So who you were in the deal with, and actually also look around, maybe there are some new connections, or at least like you can show yourself to someone else in addition who is around the team or who can influence the decision-making process as well. Even if it's not going to work now, it might work later on, and you will already kind of build the account in a better way. So I would really also try to look at maybe additional stakeholders that were not involved, but that you believe will affect the result of the deal. And again, not searching for immediate closure, but more building it and using that in your favor.
Yeah. And also I'd say another component of that is to work internally in a different way. So we need to ask ourselves internally, what can we deliver differently, or how can we change? I'll give you an example. If your implementation takes 2 months for a certain product or 1 month, given the crisis, how can we deliver services faster? How can we help brands in a way that put an emphasis on the delivery part rather than, stretching it over a few weeks or months? And we as companies, we need to change in a certain way, or at least from a delivery perspective. And I see here, I think Matthias wrote here on the chat, ask for what you can do to help them. That's exactly it. We need to ask the companies, what do you need from us, giving everything that you already know. So everything that you've done in the past few months building this opportunity, you want to keep the momentum, try to, could be a situation where they already have a good idea of how your product can be a good fit, given coronavirus. So yeah, absolutely.
Super cool. Yeah, so super cool points. Something which is coming to my mind as we talk about all these things that sellers could be doing and focusing on. There are only so many hours in a day. I'm just curious, where are each of you guys focusing your energies? Like if you were to kind of divide it up and say, okay, I don't know, I spend 50% of my week on maintaining existing deals, the other percent on starting new relationships. Where are you breaking that down? Tanning. Matthias is tanning over there. What's the breakdown? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So it depends again on the sales rep, right? For example, I have active customers and I have new business, right? So it's definitely easier to nowadays to upsell the customer if he's in a good industry rather than open up the customer. But at the same time, as we all know, and especially in enterprise sales, pipeline is the key. It should be there always. Otherwise, you're just not getting into something. So I would say for me, it's like 50-50 still. So because again, like I'm also looking into retention and expansion, right? So and this is a bit easier nowadays, because you can easily engage on the dialogue. You can easily be curious about what's the new setup, and then you can uncover really things that you've never thought about that they are now experiencing, where your solution can actually help, or you can upsell it. So 50% on active and really keeping this relationship going and growing potentially. Getting referrals as well. That's a good time, honestly, because there's different challenges that they have, and people that maybe never talked with us now would be interested to talk with us because they're like looking more into digital. But still, there is a big emphasis, like definitely 50% on building your pipeline now, building those seeds. It's super important because those that are not doing it now will not close deals in Q4. So that's really like the key. You need to build the pipeline.
Yeah, for me, it's a bit different, I think. Given that we're end of April, then I narrowed my pipeline for Q2 for four or five opportunities that for me, I know that in the next 2 weeks, I must get to a advanced conversation / contract phase, because whatever it is that won't be at that phase will be pushed out of the quarter. Realistically, anything that doesn't reach quarter contract stage by mid, I don't want to say end of May, but mid-May will be most likely pushed out. So for me, those 4 or 5 are by far top priority. And I spend, I would say 95% of my time specifically on closing these. And then the rest of the 10%, I'd say like quite similar to what Julia said. It's more prospecting and building pipeline for Q3 and Q4, which will always be challenging, right? Because Q3 is summer and people go on vacations. So yeah, so I'd say 10% is is definitely.
Hopefully we go on vacation, Moshe.
Yeah, hopefully. You never know.
Yeah.
To the balcony.
Yeah.
Everyone will be right by the laptop, right by the phone.
Yeah.
I'll be. Yeah. Super cool. Okay, so we're kind of getting close to time. It's been almost an hour since we started. So I'm just curious from the audience, how interested are people in this question right here about driving remote sales? Just a quick ping, quick thumbs up in the chat. Okay, I think maybe we'll just leave that question for now. And I think we'll kind of move on to a few summaries. And I think the first thing, which is always fun to do, is we can build our track record of accurate predictions starting now. So what predictions do both of you guys have for how this is going to impact the business landscape for sales?
Of course, sales.
I think we've already.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. No, you didn't finish.
Yeah, go for it. I was going to say we've already talked a little bit about like what that means, kind of on an industry basis. Like, there's a lot of thought that digital is going to come out of this stronger than before, because you have all these companies. I mean, especially imagining in Germany, we have our Gutes Deutsches Mittelstand, and they've finally figured out how to use Zoom, and a lot of interesting things are probably going to be happening in those companies over the next year or so. Like, this is going to really be an accelerator. But yeah, open predictions for how the business landscape is going to change for the sales function as a result of this virus.
I think I wanted to talk more about like salespeople. I think some salespeople will get definitely stronger and will accelerate now. But also like some salespeople will maybe drop in a way, because what I see in sales community, of course, there are salespeople that really love their job and they do sales because they're enjoying and empowering by this job. But also there are some that for whom it's very, very difficult and tricky. And now it's even more difficult and tricky, and you need to have even more patience. So for that reason, I think there's going to be some sales will really accelerate and learn a lot. So in the end, those who are more authentic to this will definitely win. That's kind of what I think.
Cool.
Look, in the long run, I think it's gonna be really interesting for us, for sales folks, because companies. I mean, I think everyone on the list here, everyone that participates, is selling software, or at least digital in one way or another, and given that businesses are now, I mean, shops were closed, businesses, hotels, retail, like huge verticals completely shut down and moved to work from remote, right? So it's some new technology is gonna rise from this, and for sales folks, it will be needed more than ever. So in my opinion, it's for salespeople will only, in the long run, again, short run will be very challenging for many companies, but long run, it will open a lot of new opportunities in terms of technology and in terms of ways for salespeople to communicate with brands and position new solutions.
Yeah, and when you say short, long run, so like let's say short, you think this year would be tough, but starting from next year we'll have a raise, or how do you see that?
To be honest, it really depends on how long this crisis will last, because no one really knows. I think we start to feel like it's restrictions are a bit loosening up, but it really depends. Let's see, because many of this comes from the U.S. and U.S. currently is in quite a bad situation as far as I know. So So let's see. It's a really tough question, to be honest. But in the long run, I think the effect will be very interesting to follow.
Super cool. And then I would say, as kind of a final question, what's the biggest takeaway that you'd each have for our audience based on this conversation? What do you want to give to people who are selling enterprise to focus on?
Yeah, I would say stay strong and patient. I truly believe that the best and the strongest relationships you have with customers are based on the tough times and tough negotiations. So when you had the toughest deal and toughest, longest negotiations, usually you get strongest relationship and connection because you overcome this together and you found the right solution. So I really think those customers that you'll get now would be with you for quite a long time, because that's a very hard time and you really help them there. So strong patience, and actually see it as a big benefit for yourself on building then your strong relationships with customers.
Spot on. So yeah, my takeaway, my advice would be this too shall pass. And if you're a salesperson who struggles right now because of the crisis, then know that you're not the only one. Everyone is now struggling with outreach, struggling with keeping momentum in deals, everything that we just discussed. So it's really an opportunity for, again, relationships. It's time to get closer to our clients. If you're managing accounts, get closer to them, understand their problems, hear them out, try to help them with whatever you can. And for new opportunities with new logos, with new customers, very much the same. Understand what's the pain point and how your solution can help. So really look at it as a long marathon rather than, a problem that they have now, but as a relationship for the long run. So, yeah. So
cool.
That should be it.
Thank you guys so much. That's fantastic. So great takeaways. I just want to give a few closing words from my side. First of all, big thanks to Julia and Moshe. Round of applause, ideally also in the chat, for both of you guys. Thank you so much for spending the time, preparing and delivering this session. Couldn't have done it without you, one way or the other. So it's been a pleasure from my side. And thank you to everybody who was participating in the chat and asking questions. And as next steps, I would say, first of all, you're going to get an email from me with a feedback questionnaire. I would love to hear your feedback on our first virtual session. And really looking forward to reading what you guys have to say about that, other topics that we might want to be covering with this type of virtual format, things like this, how you think this platform is working for us in general. And then finally, we have time until at least 8:10. I'll see if I can extend the clock even more for some networking. And feel free to use the tables. And if you want to gather a group of people to talk on a specific topic, just type it in the general chat, say, hey, table 5 or table 5, one of the open tables, let's talk about XYZ topic. Take the opportunity to do that, and ping me if you need any help with that. So yeah, thank you guys so much, and we'll talk to you guys in the chat, and look forward to seeing you at the next SalesMasterPRO event.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Cool. Thanks, guys.